Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to the show. As always, I got my crew with me, Darnell and Tyler. I'm Trey, and we are coming your way with the 78th edition of the Don't Kill the Messengers podcast. What we're about to get into this week is we're about to start our discussion off with some NCAA football. Before we get into some of the conferences, we're just going to talk about the rankings. Just guys, what were your thoughts on the preseason rankings?
No huge shockers in it. I mean, they seemingly just kind of played off how the year ended last year. Some drops and some increases based off of how much some of these teams lost, which is to be expected. But overall, it's nothing I'm up in arms about at all.
Yeah, I'd completely agree there. You know, you have your typical power schools toward the top. You know, your Alabamas, Florida States, Ohio States. Just a lot of teams with returning players at quarterback you see toward the top. I believe everybody in the top 6 has a returning quarterback until you get to Clemson. Typically a team with a veteran quarterback will get a nod over a team that does not. The thing Clemson will have going for them is their defense, just a solid defensive squad, and I believe that that'll be their strength coming in this year. It'll be interesting to see what happens with their offense, but I'm not too upset with any of the rankings. You just see a lot of familiar names at the top.
How do you like the number 9 placement for Michigan? Think that's right where they should be? You think a little higher or what?
Yes. Granted, I'm not going to say I don't believe that they don't belong there. I mean, I think it might be a touch high only because, touch low depending how you want to look at it. But, I expected them to be more around the 10 to 12. Only because they've lost so much and returned so few. Both offense and defense, they're going to have a lot of kids that got to grow up fast, especially with a tough week 1 game against Florida. We're going to learn a lot about the team. But thankfully, I always say it's not about how you lose, it's all about when you lose. And a week 1 loss doesn't kill you. It's not conference play yet, unless you're Ohio State who pulled Indiana week 1. But it's not a conference game, so there's still a lot of opportunity for Michigan after week 1. But yeah, I mean, I like them at 9. I think they still have a lot to prove. But like I said, they have a returning quarterback who played well last year, played well while hurt as well. They have great defensive coordinator, great head coach. So let's have to see what they bring onto the field.
Now, what do you guys just think about the SEC? Because I think they lead with 6 teams in the top 25. Whole conference was looking kind of iffy last year. Just SEC wasn't, dominant like they were once was. Y'all just think how do y'all just feel about that? Y'all comfortable with them just having 6 teams in the top 25? Or
I mean, I'm not disturbed by it or anything like that because there's only one of them in the top 10, I believe, which is Alabama. Which I mean, I think they deserve it. They've been in the playoff every year of its existence and haven't had a big fall off. And following them up is LSU down at 12, and they finished reasonably strong last year. Auburn was up and down there at 13. Georgia, you're expecting to have a step forward year, and Florida, I mean, they hung out around that lower part of the top 25 all last year. I mean, if you want to harp about Tennessee down at 24, I don't blame you there, since, they have trouble just showing and proving, recent history, I should say. But no, I mean, I don't think, I guess we may still be holding on to that SEC is king type label because of their history of dominance. But no, I don't think it's anything crazy. I mean, they're basically sprinkled in at 12 through 24.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. With them being one of the deeper conferences anyway, you should expect them to get more teams in. Between them and the Big Ten, I feel like they should be the two leading conferences in the preseason top 25 polls every year. And that's just based on the fact that, like, at one point, the Big Ten had 8 or 9 ranked teams last year? Mm. That's crazy, and that should be taken into account going into a following year, all things considered. A returning roster, head coach change, things like that. But, the SEC deep every year always has teams constantly ranked. It helps that they always find a way into the national championship game. And I guess since the playoffs started, Alabama's pretty much anchored that. But yeah, I'm not upset with the SEC presence. You expect it. And I feel like everybody in the country expects it at this point. So if you want to argue that the SEC isn't the best conference, that's fine. I think that's more open for discussion than ever. But I think we have to at least be at a point where we expect it.
And I mean, to add a little bit to it, I mean, who do you put in over these teams? Honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for one, I think we could all agree Alabama's year in and year out, always brings in top 1 or 2 recruiting class. So, putting them at number 1 coming off a national championship game berth, number 1 recruiting class, to put them number 1 is not ridiculous again. But the only one where I think you could start to argue, LSU always has quarterback troubles, Auburn, super inconsistent. You could start to nitpick then, but the preseason ranking and even the ranking for the first, 4, 5, 6 weeks doesn't even matter. It's till the college football playoff ranking comes out. Yeah. So in reality, this is just discussion. It's a general basis for what we're going to see when the college football ranking comes around, because it doesn't waver too much.
Just one last one, since we're from Michigan, Western Michigan, they had a pretty good, season last year, ended up losing their, bowl game. But just for the season that they had last year, do you guys fellas that, they should have perhaps gotten in the top 25 or what?
No, not really. They lost their coach, their quarterback, and a receiver to the draft, their best receiver. Yes. So, I mean, that's a lot for a school in a conference like that to bounce back from. I don't think anybody expected a top 25 ranking after seeing their coach leave from Minnesota, and like I said, the other losses. Not that their quarterback was great, but you lose a senior quarterback, especially when you have talent like that at receiver, it's hard to make up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think losing PJ Fleck was bigger than losing any player. PJ Fleck brought a culture, he brought an attitude. The team was in the boat with him. They were rowing the boat.
And he even took the slogan with him to Minnesota.
I know that if I were a Western Michigan fan or something, that would upset me a little bit. But I think he was the catalyst behind it all. So I'm not shocked at all that Western's not in there.
Okay.
But to a point, wouldn't you guys almost feel like a team's kind of getting robbed of a preseason ranking there? If they said, oh, well, as a non-power 5, Western Michigan had a great year. Let's put them toward the bottom just to represent them. It's like, you'd almost feel like a team, even though I said, this ranking doesn't mean jack squat, you'd still feel someone's kind of getting gypped there.
Yeah. Yeah, in a way, yeah. I agree with that. All right, guys, just any more comments, for this, for the NCAA football rankings?
No.
All right. Up next, we're about to start with the Big 12. Just start talking about Texas. You guys think this will be the year that they'll turn it around and start having that dominant football like they once was?
It's gonna be so hard to tell, especially under Coach Harmon. Like, new coach, new system, new attitude, new culture. I would say ever since Mac Brown left, you're looking at a fan base that will find a very hard time trusting a new coach. As a Michigan fan, I went through that. You bring in Rich Rodriguez, you get all excited, and you basically face plant in front of the entire nation while everyone points and laughs. And I feel like Texas did the same exact kind of thing. They bring in Charlie Strong, and they kind of make a face plant, and then they kind of recover. And now they got Harmon, and he's going to really have to try and win this fan base over quick, because they are unsettled, and they need winning football. That Longhorn fan base, that 2005 season was way too long ago for them. Like, you can't hold on to that anymore. So, do I think they can turn around? Yeah, I do. I think Harmon's a great coach, did a great job at Houston. So he's staying in state. Hopefully he can, get some of those guys that were looking at Houston to maybe hop over to Texas. And maybe he can keep a lot more of the 5-star recruits in the area. I think that's going to be the first big step for him. Being able to get a lot of the guys that he wants in there and go from there. Cause like I said, he's going to have to do something to give this fan base hope fairly quick.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're in a pretty good position to make a big stride from last year. For a lot of the grief that Charlie Strong got, I do think he laid the groundwork to put this team on a path for getting back to what they should be. When he came in, he had to basically do a little bit of cleaning house. He had to get rid of a lot of knuckleheads, and that kind of set him back a little bit. Recruiting was reasonably strong, but I mean, they couldn't really put things together. But I do think with their defense, they have a young quarterback, in was it Buechele?
Yeah, something like that.
Shane Buechele, who had a decent but up and down season last year. I think Tom Herman's a little bit better with quarterback, so he'll probably be able to do something with that, especially installing that offense that he had at Houston. I think that does some things. I mean, there's still some holes that we wonder where they're going to be filled. There's no Deontay Foreman is not there. So, I mean, there's some work to see who's going to be man in that backfield, giving support to Buechele. But I do think they have a solid defense. O-line looks good. We just have to see where they go from there. Is it going to be a full turnaround where Texas is like sniffing the playoff picture? I don't think so, but I think they get back to a bowl, and I do think they win one of their bigger games this year. So, like USC or Oklahoma, I think they probably sneak one of those out.
Yeah, I think Texas can definitely be a spoiler in the Big 12 this year. Just a team kind of floating around 7, maybe 8 wins. But, to their own joy, I guess they could, block somebody's path. And, when you're not playing for the playoff anymore, it's always nice to ruin somebody's party. And I think that they have that potential for sure. But like you alluded to, Darnell, the defense will be their strength this year. It'll just be interesting to see how that offense comes along. See the progression, of a young quarterback in a second year. I mean, we remember, what were they playing Notre Dame? He was dropping dimes all over the field, like 30, 40-yard dimes. It was almost unbelievable. We were all wondering who this kid is. And it'll be interesting to see if he can keep that up, have a good second year, and like you said, maybe pull out a big one.
All right, now we'll talk about Oklahoma next. With the retirement of Stoops, how do you think they will be this year?
Well, this is for the positives I had for Texas. I think there's some negatives here. Because Bob Stoops leaving. I mean, he's the longest tenured coach that was left in the Big 12, and now he's out of the picture, and it was abrupt. So now they're going with a very, very young coach in Lincoln Riley. He is at least ingrained in the system as he was one of their coordinators, but he's taking over with a lot of their production gone. He still has Baker Mayfield, which is good, but we have no Joe Mixon, no Samaj P. Ryan, and no D.D. Westbrook, and that's thousands of yards and I think 39 touchdowns from last year between those three. So that's a lot to make up. I think if they stick with where they're ranked right now and can hang around that, I'll be surprised, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. Did you want to go, Trey?
No, I was just looking. Yeah, I was just Lincoln Riley. Yeah, he's very young. He'd be 34 next month. So that with his youth, it'd just be interesting with how he can connect with those guys on the squad. So
and
you can go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, and he's following up a guy that was, pretty much a given that they're going to have a 9-win season. He's following a guy that's had a ton of success, a guy that was winning Big 12 championships in his sleep. It's a tough act to follow. So it'll be very interesting to see how he grabs hold of this team and puts them under his leadership. So he's going to have to definitely make his presence felt there. It was an abrupt departure by Stoops. There's nothing you can really do about that. If you feel like it's time, it's time. So, I remember when Stoops did, come out and retire, I said it'll be interesting to see if something pops up, like there was a reason he retired. I haven't seen anything yet, so it doesn't seem like there's some scandal on the way or something, but, yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see, but, Oklahoma will have a lot to overcome this year. They'll need to find some new playmakers. Baker Mayfield's just about the only big returner, if you will. So, I believe I read somewhere that, Oklahoma is actually returning their whole entire offensive line. So that's a positive.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a huge positive, especially when you're looking to groom a new running back. And, if you're trying to get some receivers some time to, break routes and create some space, it's always good for your quarterback to have a good offensive line. It's good for the whole entire offense. So, as much as we say, they got so much to replace, having that offensive line all coming back may hide a lot of the inexperience that may be on the field this year for Oklahoma.
Always nice when you have something where you can for sure keep your quarterback upright.
Yeah. All right, guys. Anything else to add for OU?
Yeah, hopefully this Baker Mayfield stuff doesn't. I guess we all remember he was public intoxication.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see how that follows him throughout the season, because they're going to be talking about it almost every game, or at least for the first couple weeks, I think. But fans won't let him forget about it, so it'll be interesting to see how that follows him throughout the season.
Yeah. I would just like to see just how Oklahoma just starts their season off. Because if you guys remember last year, they were looking pretty iffy during the start of the season. They had a couple of key losses to set them back. So, it's just how they could start the season off. That can really say a lot about just how they will be going forward. All right, guys, we're about to get into our predictions right now. Who do you guys who you guys think will be in their bowl game? This will be their first bowl game this year.
Championship game.
Well, championship, conference championship game, yeah. So yeah, who do you guys have?
I'm gonna go with Oklahoma versus Kansas State.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of people kind of have this conference really split up. It seems like there's a couple, like 3 or 4 teams you can pick from, and that's it. It doesn't seem to be real deep of a conference this year. But I'm going to go Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State.
All right. I'm agreeing with Ty. I'm going to go Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State as well. Now, who would you guys have winning this game?
I'll have Oklahoma winning.
Yeah, I would have Oklahoma winning. By the end of the year, you would think they've found whatever new playmakers they're going to have, and talent will just ring true.
Okay. Write this down.
But real quick, while you're writing that down, the most interesting thing about the Big 12 is they're not a big enough conference to divide up into divisions. Yeah. So it's kind of a big free for all to be the top 2, and I think that it could be very interesting if we get into some sort of a tiebreak situation.
Could you guys see some teams starting to come to the Big 12 soon, about like say a couple of years from now, or like how long do you think it'll be till they start to actually become truly the Big 12?
I would say probably in the next 2-3 years they probably start adding some other teams to become the Big 12 again.
Yeah, I mean you're looking at some of the non-Power 5 schools, around there. You're looking at a Houston school that just geographically makes a ton of sense. Had a great season last year. Coach left, so I was pushing for them to get into the Big 12 for this coming year, but didn't happen. I could see a team like that getting in, but geographically, West Virginia doesn't make sense. So really, anybody could get into the Big 12. Just the idea of who do they want in there financially. That's what's going to really bring a team in more than, talent.
Make money for that conference.
Yeah, absolutely. For all we know, someone like a BYU could get in, or Nevada, for all we know. Just they have to financially bring something to the table. And that's, at the end of the day, all that matters.
All right, guys. We're about to go to the PAC.
Who did you have winning? I didn't hear you.
Oh, yeah, I said Oklahoma as well.
Oklahoma?
Yeah, Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State, and yeah, Oklahoma.
Okay.
But yeah, we're about to go to the Pac-12 next. First thing we're about to talk about is Mora. Do you guys feel as if there's a lot of pressure on him this season?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, they've been getting talent for a while now, and I know Rosen got hurt last year, but it is kind of time to show and prove if they're going to really be considered top part of this conference. Yes, it's time for them to do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely agree. You have one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the country, and you're not really doing a whole lot. So, yeah, I think it's just plain and simple. Record hasn't been there. Performance hasn't been there. They haven't, I don't even think they've sniffed the Pac-12 championship game. I can't exactly remember last year's results off the top of my head. I have them right here, so let me just pull that up. Yeah, last year 2-7 in the conference, 4-8 overall.
Yeah.
Like for having a guy that could be a projected number 1 pick, you got to be doing better than 4 wins.
Yeah. Now, what did you guys think about Rosen's comments? Little about a couple weeks ago, I believe, he was talking about how you couldn't really mix academics and athletics together. How did you guys feel about this statement? He has a lot of people agreeing with him, and he also had a lot of people disagreeing with him. But just what were your thoughts on those comments?
I mean, he spoke on what's a hot button issue as far as college football goes, and that's the whether basically these kids are actually student athletes, as they call them, or are they employees? And I mean, I'm on Josh Rosen's side as far as most of the statements. I could have lived without him trying to throw shade at other schools as far as raising SAT scores and all that kind of stuff. But as far as what he has to do and what he's and still trying to go to class and stuff, I do kind of agree with that. Basically, football for these kids, it is like they're doing a full-time job along with keeping a class schedule, but they don't make anything for it. So I know a lot of people's issues were like, hey, I had to work full-time to pay for college and blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, he has to too, but he's not actually getting paid for it. Like I'm sorry for all those people that you weren't good enough to get an academic scholarship or whatever else. But I mean, that doesn't mean you can just hate that these kids have to kind of be slaves to their schools and also really not be able to pick a major that they might actually want to pursue because, hey, if a class doesn't fit that schedule, you got to go to practice. You can't go to that class because we brought you here to play football. Yeah. So pick a major that works. So, I mean, there's a lot of... Oh, go ahead.
And on top of that, pick a major where you're going to be able to stay on the field due to eligibility.
Yeah, sometimes their major is eligibility.
Yeah, for 3 years, then they leave campus. And, to that point as well, the football team's not like the basketball team. And the basketball situation is very unique because those guys just have to pass first semester and then they don't even have to go to class second semester because they're going to the NBA anyway. Mm-hmm. These guys are a one semester sport where they have to stay eligible through the entire semester. They can't get halfway through their season and then say, well, I don't really have to worry about class anymore. I'm with you, Darnell. Where I agree with him is the fact that the time you have to put into football and then the time you have to put into your studies don't go together at all. The math doesn't equal up there at all. I mean, if you're talking a 3-hour practice, then you're probably talking and at least an hour and a half in the trainer's room after, and then you might have about another hour and a half or two of film after that. And then it's like, all right, now go study. It's like, well, I'm exhausted. It's 10 o'clock. The puzzle pieces don't fit. And I don't think that Rosen is wrong by saying any of it. Now, like you said, it does come down, where, when you start saying it's a full-time job and how all that equates to paying college athletes versus not paying college athletes. When I view Rosen's comments, I like to kind of push that aside and save that for a different argument because I just want to focus on the fact that you're right. The time for studies and the time for football don't add up. They just don't. And yes, you can throw the whole pay the college athlete scenario in there as well. And I totally understand it because it does fit, but I'll just handle Rosen's comments solely based off of what he said and not saying we should be paid for it. But like you said, where I kind of lost some credence with him is when he said, well, maybe some other schools should, raise their SAT scores. Their football teams wouldn't be the same. It's like, I get that, dude, but your team just went 4-8. Don't try and belittle other schools just because you think you have it harder than they do. It's like they still have to be eligible. They still have to, get out onto the field. They still have to study, go to class. It's like their classes may not be as hard as the ones you're choosing to take, but they still have to do it too. And yeah, just strong comments coming from a guy that has a lot of eyes on him. It'll be interesting to see how this, once again, kind of like Baker Mayfield, how this follows Rosen throughout the year. Kind of like how Cardale Jones, once he hit the scene, the whole week came to play football and not play school, how that followed him for a while. Just, you can have good intentions in saying something and just have all hell unleashed on you. So, in kind of a tough spot for Rosen from here on out, but he should be going to the NFL after this. So I don't think he has a ton to worry about.
Yeah. Now you brought it up, Ty, just talking about the differences between basketball and football. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think that the college athletes should be one and done, like the NBA, or like how do you guys feel about that?
I mean, I really don't believe there should be any restriction on them. I understand more so why it is for football, just because, I mean, physically, an 18-year-old they're rarely gonna have the size, strength necessary to be in the NFL. That lends more towards the NBA. But I mean, yes, I'm not for that anyway. I kind of think it's a bit of a farce that the NFL basically has a free minor league in college football. Mm-hmm. Like these kids have to go to college to play football for 3 years, or else there's no other avenue to make it to the NFL. And like this is, as far as this is the most dangerous sport. Like as far as injuries all around, you got the CTE studies, you have ACLs being blown on the regular, and every other kind of injury. And I mean, we already know that the career span of an NFL player is 3 years. But I mean, that's already after they've had to put themselves through two-a-days, all through elementary through high school, and then all the work they have to put in college for 3 years before they can go to the NFL. So, I mean, it's tough to be able to know that. I mean, I know at least NBA player or college basketball players, they do have another choice. Like if they are mature enough or a parent can trust them, you can go to Italy or Spain or China or something like that and play a year of ball overseas and actually make your money and come back, and then you can be eligible for the NBA draft. I know a lot of kids don't do that because like it's probably more of an upside to go to college as a college basketball player because you get to have a little bit of that experience. And like Ty alluded to earlier, you really only have to go to class for a half the year. Yeah. You knock that first semester out and you stay above that 2.0 or whatever it is that you need to stay eligible, and then you get to just relax on campus and be big man on campus for that second half of the year until you get ready to declare your name for the draft and make your money.
Yeah, and I think you could also argue that college basketball just does give you the best exposure. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, NBA teams have scouts that are just on a completely different level, aware of a lot more than we think they are. But I think college basketball just gives you the best exposure on a national level. I mean, how many times do we hear of a U.S. player going overseas, coming back for the draft, and we know nothing about it? I think most notably this past year was, what was his name, Terrence Ferguson? Mm-hmm. He went overseas. I believe he played in Australia or something like that. Gets in the draft, an American guy, and we don't know who he is. So college basketball, I think, is just your best avenue for exposure. But yeah, and something we talked about last week after we got off the air was the fact that college football basically is a free minor league for the NFL. Like, should there potentially be some sort of a G League for football, where these guys can go get a little bit of money and really work up their skills, all while still getting NFL ready? I get it. college football is going to be your best avenue, just like I think college basketball is your best avenue if you're an American. We see a lot of guys with NFL dreams come to America to play college football. And I think that college football is just so cemented that getting a minor league for football just doesn't really fit. I think it would be tough to get enough teams. You're basically coming up with an NFL junior and having to have a whole other entity run it. And the NFL won't pick up a development league like the NBA did. I just don't think they would. One, it would be something else for Goodell to screw up, but I just don't think there's enough there. Do I think there potentially needs to be another avenue? Yes, but I just don't know what it is. It just seems that a minor league would make the most sense. It's just I don't know that there's enough pieces there for it to work out.
All right, guys. Now, any other comments about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Who are some key players that you guys are looking out for in the Pac-12?
Yeah, I think two of the most notable, and I think Darnell, you'll completely agree, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen. We're looking at possibly 2 first-round picks here. I think they're really, yes, there's other players that will, rise up in that conference, but these are the 2 names along with Wyoming's Josh Allen that are apparently all being, the race for the number 1 quarterback taken in 2018. If I had my pick, at least among Darnold and Rosen, I'd go Darnold. He showed me a lot more last year. He's shown, he can really lead a team. He can, USC, he basically brought USC back to relevance. And I think it's going to be real fun watching him this year. He'll have more eyes on him. USC should get more national exposure, played in the big games again. He led them to a Rose Bowl last year, so they're coming off a high season. But yeah, if there are 2 players to watch, those are the 2.
Yeah, I totally agree there. These are 2 kids that are, could go possibly 1 and 2 in the draft next year, depending on season shakeup. If Rosen stays healthy and is back in form of what he was a couple years ago, and Sam Darnold, people are already salivating over the kid. So, outside of them, I guess to give a little bit of defensive love, I would say give out a couple of linebackers. Cameron Smith from USC as a linebacker, really good inside linebacker, smart kid, has a nose for the football. I will look out for him. You'll see him make a lot of tackles and just kind of be all over the place. And then I would look over to Washington. They probably won't do a lot this year, seeing as they lost a lot of talent. But Azim Victor, another linebacker, a senior, also will be all over the place. He was 3rd in tackles for the team last year, even though he missed the last 4 games on the season. So looking for a bounce back year from him.
All right. Now get back to the predictions for this one. Who do you guys have for the conference game, and who do you have winning?
Do you want me to go?
Oh yeah.
I'll start. I got Washington versus USC, and I have Washington winning.
You have Washington winning, huh?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
They lost some guys, man, but I'm still going to stick with them. So
Coach Peterson do enough for you last year?
He did. Yeah. So
no, he's a good coach. I don't mean that. I don't mean that in a negative way at all.
Yeah.
This one was tough for me. I think this was the toughest one of the 3 conferences we're going to cover. just because, I mean, like, Washington State had a good year last year. Stanford can always rise up.
The
Colorado.
thing, like, I like Stanford, man, but it's just like, you know, what will I expect out of him, you know, with McCaffrey gone? That guy was just so much of their team, you know.
I agree.
Just, you know, what can I really expect from this team, you know, with McCaffrey gone? So I just think with him leaving, that just left a big piece into that offense for him, at least. So I do like Stanford, man, but I just went with Washington.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ty.
Yeah, I mean, and then you're looking at the South. Colorado won that division last year. I'm going to pick USC out of the South for sure, but I had a hard time with the North. You know, I kind of wanted to pick Washington again, you know, thinking that that whole North Division everybody might take a half step back this year. Like Trey said, losing McCaffrey's big. You're losing your best special teams player and your best offensive player. So I think that North Division's up for grabs, and that's where I think coaching really comes into play. And that's why I'm going to pick Washington again in the North. Okay. But I'm going to pick USC to win the Pac-12 this year.
All right. Now, what about you, Darn? You feeling Oregon State and UCLA?
No, I'm not. I'm with you guys on USC. Representing the South, but I'm going with the devil. I know with the smart kids, I'm going with Stanford. Still in the North.
I wanted to pick them.
Yeah, I mean, even though yes, losing Christian McCaffrey is going to be big. I mean, that's a lot of production loss, but it's just they always find a way to consistently get to 9 or 10 games, and I just think that holds up. There's a consistent team. That's about all I can say about them. You may not know a single player on their team, but they play a certain way, and you can usually just mark them down for 9 wins. So I'm going with that.
Smart.
So I'm going with that, but I'm going to pick USC over.
Okay. And you had USC too, right? So. All right, so you 2 USCs and 1 Washington. All right.
Yeah, I mean, even though USC loses Juju Smith-Schuster, I feel like wide receivers are less a dime a dozen than any other position in college football. So, I think Sam Darnold's enough there.
Yeah, they're already calling him best prospect since Andrew Luck. So.
Isn't everybody the best prospect since Andrew Luck, though?
well, Luck was the best since Elway, so now I have to say he's the best since Luck.
Even though it seemed like Andrew Luck was the best prospect since Andrew Luck.
Well, and he's still trying to live up to being that prospect.
True. That is true.
All right, guys. Now we're about to go to the ACC. Just who are some key players from this conference you guys have your eye on?
I'll let you start that one right now.
I mean, well, with the ACC, I mean, there's some transition going on here. We want to see what Clemson shows. With them, I'll still go a little, sideways without trying to go with the major teams. Out of Boston College, I'm going to go D lineman, Harold Landry, senior. Let's see how he blows up. He had 17 sacks last year, led the nation. So, want to see how what kind of return, he can have from that. And then, also on the D-line, he'll be a sophomore this year from Clemson, Dexter Lawrence. Also just a beast on the D-line. I want to see how these two rec shop. I think they'll make some big strides.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with both of those. Just quick stat on Dexter Lawrence, 9.5 tackles for loss last year. That's impressive stuff. And I don't think there's much to argue with there. I guess I'll take, well, for one, the obvious one, Lamar Jackson, Heisman winner. Just because I feel like that name needs to be brought up. Dude's highlight reel. He's just one of those guys you watch at every opportunity you can.
Yeah. I'm just real quick, I'm kind of a little bit, just kind of nervous for him for just a season because, he started off, he was hot, but during the end of the, season, a lot of teams, started to catch up to him a little bit. So, like I said, the guy was remarkable. He had, great stats. But just to see, this year, will teams, adjust to him like they were adjusting to him during the end of last season. So, like I said, I do like him. He's a very, entertaining, guy to watch on the field, but, it's this kind of up and down with him right now, just how, teams were playing with, were able to stop him during the end of the season last year. So,
I feel, I'll agree. Teams kind of figured him out. At least, let me rephrase it. I feel like teams figured out if you stop everybody around him, then you're standing a really good chance. Like, I feel like, teams really kind of locked down on his receivers, forced him to try and make some more plays with his feet toward the end of the year. Granted, he made plays with his feet all year long, but, I feel like a lot of the other players around him got shut down, which made him try and force some plays. But, it's tough to really pinpoint exactly what it could have been. But then my other two picks are both from Florida State. First one's DeAndre Francois, quarterback. Freshman quarterback last year took a beating early in the year, but really stepped up. I'm going to be interested to see if he has kind of a blow up breakout season. And I think he can. I think he's talented enough, has really good vision, can use his feet when he needs to. And just a good arm. A year of experience can go a long way for a young quarterback. Sometimes, have the baptism by fire is the best way to learn. So, it was tough to watch him struggle early last year, but I think he can have a really good year this year. And then secondly, for Florida State, I'm going to pick whoever ends up being the featured running back. Losing Dalvin Cook's huge. He's one of those players, how in the world are we ever going to replace Dalvin Cook? So, whoever fills that position is going to be something worth watching. So I'm sure they already have somebody. It's just we don't really know who it is just yet. But like I said, replacing a player like a Dalvin Cook or replacing a player like Christian McCaffrey is something worth keeping an eye on. Because if Florida State wants to make a really good run, and if they want to be in contention for the playoff again, they'll have to find a solid running game. And if they can find a guy who's dual threat like Dalvin Cook was, running, catching, they're going to be in pretty good shape moving forward. So it'll just be interesting to see if they can find the guy, and if they can, how long will that take?
All right, guys. Is that it for your players?
Yeah.
Okay. Up next is what are you guys' expectations for Clemson this year? They lost some key guys. You guys still think they can possibly repeat, pull off a championship or whatever? Like, how do you guys feel about them?
I don't have them in the Final Four or anything like that. I think they're going to be a good team still, so it's not like just full fall off or anything like that. But they have a lot to replace themselves. You lose a player like Deshaun Watson and you lose Mike Williams. Those are two big pieces, and a lot of pressure is going to be on Kelly Bryant, who is their next starting quarterback. I mean, he's following up two pretty good quarterbacks. I mean, you had, of course, Deshaun Watson, who was a Heisman Trophy winner, and Taj Boyd was no slouch. So, I mean, that's following quite a line, especially since Deshaun Watson actually was stepped up from Taj Boyd. I don't think we can expect that from Kelly Bryant. The positive with him, he is a junior, so it's not like it's a freshman stepping up or anything like that. So he has some experience within the program, but there's still going to be a learning curve here getting meaningful snaps and being the man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm right there with Darnell. I think they'll still have a very respectable year. I don't think Dabo Swinney will allow for them to miss a bowl game. I expect more than 6 wins. I don't know if I expect 8. I wouldn't be surprised if they, if I had to put an over/under on them, it would be at 7.5. I would probably pick the over. So I'm going to expect 8 wins out of them. I don't think it'll be good enough to get to the ACC championship game, but I don't expect them to be a pushover. Their strength will be their defense. Offense will have to come along, but like Darnell said, having your quarterback coming in, being a junior, it means he knows the system. He's been around. He's seen the venues. Nothing should really shock him at this point. So I expect him to be a guy that doesn't really get rattled, based off of, the bright lights. It's always different when you're on the field, but, it's a guy who's seen it all, good and bad. And he's seen a lot of good. So, it'll just be interesting to see how he handles adversity if this team, say they lose 2 in a row at some point. It'll be interesting to see how he'll handle the adversity, especially like you mentioned, Trey, coming off a national championship season.
Yeah, and I mean, lucky enough for them, I think their schedule plays out pretty well for this year of transition. I mean, they're tougher games they get at home. They get Auburn coming into them, and Florida State is coming there. Those are probably the toughest 2 matchups they have. They have to go to Louisville. But I mean, I do think they're probably still a hair ahead of them in overall talent, so they'll probably still be favored there. But I think their schedule shapes up where they could win 9 games still. So,
but both of you guys agree that they're not in your top 4, right?
No, yeah, I don't see it to the title game or to the playoff.
Okay. We'll have to break that down next week. But guys, who do you have in your conference game for this one? And who do you have winning? Me, I'll go. Got this being a rivalry game. I got the U versus Florida State. I do have Florida State winning though. It's going to be interesting to see Miami. Last year they started off pretty good, but once they took a loss from Florida State, they started to slip a little bit. So their first meeting could really have an impact on how Miami's season will continue to go further. But that's my pick.
Who you got, Ty?
Yeah, I really don't like the ACC conference, mainly because their divisions are so skewed. Having Clemson, Louisville, and Florida State all in the same division, I absolutely hate that. And then, the other side, you're looking basically at mediocre schools. So
U was not mediocre, man.
When have they been good lately?
Yeah, post 2003. Maybe not even then. But no, I just think that this is one of the conferences that could really benefit from a realignment. And therefore it made it a little tough for me, but I'm actually going to go, between Louisville and Florida State. I said I'd make a decision, but I didn't. I didn't make a decision.
So, wow, okay, Louisville, Florida State, so Clemson's not even.
No, I'm going to go Florida State. I'm going to go Florida State versus, I'll go Virginia Tech again. They'll squeak back in it.
Okay, FSU.
Obviously, with the winner being Florida State.
Okay, I agree too.
Yeah, we're on the same plane there. I'm thinking Virginia Tech and Florida State. I think Virginia Tech they'll have just enough to go through their their division and get in there. But yeah, I think Florida State will probably house them when it gets to that.
Oh yeah, but it's one of those things where that Coastal Division is just you're looking at those teams and wondering how are any of them going to compete with the top of the Atlantic Division? Yeah. And they're not. I mean, Virginia Tech somehow made the ACC championship a game last year. Somehow. I mean, you don't expect it, that's for sure.
Yeah. But I gotta say this year, I don't totally hate your pick of Miami, Trey.
Yeah. Although it'll be interesting to see how they come back from losing Brad Kaya to the Lions.
Yeah, true, yeah.
To the 1-0 preseason Lions.
Yeah.
Yeah, State. I mean, I do think they're another team where their schedule shapes up pretty well.
Yeah.
They have to go to Florida State, where
play them week 3.
Yeah. I don't think that will end nicely, but they have kind of a soft schedule too.
Yeah.
Bethune-Cookman, Arkansas State, Toledo, Duke, Georgia Tech, Syracuse. They get to feast on some bad teams.
Yeah, for sure. But like I said, did you say that Miami plays Florida State week 3?
Yeah, week 3, week 4.
That's
week 3.
Yeah,
week 3. And like I mentioned earlier, it's all about when you lose. You can lose a game week 3 and still be okay.
Yeah.
Like it's tough when you start losing week 9, week 10. That's when you start really losing ground in your conference and let alone your division.
Yeah.
So, to get them early would be nice, or is nice for Miami, because say you just get housed. You just look at it and say, all right, it's week 3, it's one conference loss. Let's, brush off the dirt and go. And you can learn a lot from getting housed early in the season.
Yeah.
Like how many times you look at a team and you go, they have that kind of a record after what I saw week 3? Like that's how I felt about Penn State. Michigan houses Penn State 48-10, and they're playing for the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. But yeah,
losing early isn't the end of the world.
Yeah. So yeah, you were deciding between Louisville and Florida State. Okay. So yeah, you would have Clemson finishing in third in their division?
Yeah.
Okay.
Third, or potentially depending how some of the non-conference games play out, or I guess even how those 3 teams look against each other.
Yeah.
Clemson could potentially be in a tie for second in the Atlantic. It's possible.
Yeah.
I think they finished second.
Yeah, I was thinking, Florida State, Clemson, then Louisville. Like I said, I just need to see how LeVar, how he'll do.
Lamar, not LeVar.
Yeah. I'm getting
the ball
balls.
on
I don't disagree with that. For me, it's going to be all about, is Louisville going to be putting up 60 a game again? Are they going to be just scoring points coming off the bus? Or are they going to actually have to fight games this year? Because if Louisville's offense isn't there, I can totally see Clemson finishing second. But I feel like if Lamar checks does even, 3/4 of what he did last year and could put up 40 plus a game, teams have to keep up.
Yeah. So it's still a good pick, man. Those 3, safe to say you can expect big things from those 3 schools.
I'm not expecting Syracuse to sneak up in there.
Yeah.
Wait for basketball season, Syracuse.
All right, guys. Is there anything else to add before we close this off?
No. So can we just go over real quick again who we had winning these 3?
Yeah.
Mainly because I forgot.
For the Big 12, yeah, I always just find these interesting.
I think we all have Oklahoma there.
Yeah, we all have Oklahoma. Ty, you had Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm.
So did I. And Darnell had Oklahoma versus Kansas State. For the PAC, me and Ty, we both had Washington versus USC. Tyler had USC, I had Washington. And Darnell had Stanford versus USC. He had USC winning that. And ACC, Ty, you got FSU versus Virginia Tech. Florida State winning. we all got Florida State winning. Darnell got Virginia Tech versus Florida State, and I got the U versus Florida State. Anybody want to make a last second switch or anything?
We don't really know what we're doing. Let's be honest. Like week 3, week 4, then we start to go, all right, that's looking like a good pick.
Yeah, we had some
it's
very good early upsets last year, so it's
yeah, for sure. But based off of what we know from last year, recruiting classes coming in, yearly trends, like the cream of the crop always seems to be the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
And it's always your Alabamas, your Oklahomas. The same
Ohio
teams.
States,
The same teams always seem to be there.
Yeah.
And I just don't expect, that changing, especially in college football.
Yeah. All right, yeah. So next week we got to break down this awesome Mayweather McGregor fight, and then we got to we got to do the Big Ten and SEC.
So I get a week off from the show if we're talking about that fight, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can throw my nonsense into the nonsense that already is.
Yeah. So that's coming up. Still think they got some tickets on. I still don't think it's sold out yet. But
why don't you go buy one?
I was gonna say, you got your $3,000 for a nosebleed seat?
Hey, I'm straight, man. Not to watch that garbage.
You'll watch it.
Yeah. But all right, guys, as always, I appreciate y'all checking us out. Again, you can find us on Twitter at DKM_cast. You can also find this podcast on Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud. Just hit us up in that search engine. We should pop up. But yeah, catch you guys next week. Peace out.